Hi, this is Charlotte Stewart. You might know me from Little House on the Prairie or Eraserhead or even Twin Peaks. So I'm here with Mr. Media, and I hope you enjoy it.
I'm Bob Andelman, and this is a Mr. Media interview. You can see, hear, and read more than 1,000 of my celebrity interviews at MrMedia.com. That's MRmedia.com. On today's show, I'll welcome actress Charlotte Stewart, whose roles have ranged from Mary X in Eraserhead to Miss Beadle on Little House on the Prairie, and whose lovers have included everyone from actor Tim Considine of My Three Sons, to whom she was married, to Jim Morrison, lead singer of The Doors. Yeah, I'll let that settle in for a second. She's written about all that, alcohol addiction, breast cancer, and more in a new memoir, Little House in the Hollywood Hills, a bad girl's guide to becoming Miss Beadle, Mary X, and me. She'll even read a passage from her book during today's show. And watch for her return to Twin Peaks as Betty Briggs on Showtime in early 2017. Stick around, because if you don't, the new schoolmarm in town will rap your knuckles hard with a ruler. And damn, that hurts! When you pick up a memoir, particularly a celebrity memoir, part of the inherent appeal is that you can safely be a voyeur at arm's reach. But when that celebrity's memoir falls short on sharing names and intimate details, well, that's not a great read. Because if you just wanted to hear how swell everybody is and how perfect a celebrity's life is, you could just tune into Ellen. So when I tell you that actress Charlotte Stewart's autobiography delivers on both bold-faced names and remarkably personal details, trust me, I'm underselling the book. In Little House in the Hollywood Hills, a bad girl's guide to becoming Miss Beadle, Mary X, and me, the author tells stories about the friends she made, the roles she played, and the men she loved across Hollywood going back more than 50 years. Like who? Well, I'm so glad you asked. She had a long getaway weekend with singer Jim Morrison of The Doors shortly before his fateful final trip to Paris. Mm-hmm. She was married to actor Tim Considine, one of the sons in the CBS hit comedy My Three Sons, although that didn't keep her from leading a rather wild life of sex and drugs and drinking, of which her husband knew nothing. One of the few men she turned down was her boss for 4 years, as she played the reserved schoolmarm, Miss Beadle, on Little House on the Prairie. The boss's name? That's right, Pa Ingalls himself, Michael Landon. A few more names that show up in her life story? Elvis Presley, Kevin Bacon, Kyle MacLachlan, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, Jimmy Stewart. Oh, and get this, she inspired a scene in Tom Wolfe's novel, The Bonfire of the Vanities. That's a great story. She also co-starred in David Lynch's breakthrough cult film, Eraserhead, as Mary X. Mm-hmm. And while she and the director, to the best of my knowledge, never got together off the set, she did live on and off through the years with Eraserhead himself, Jack Nance. And Lynch gave her the recurring role of Betsy Briggs on his legendary TV show, Twin Peaks, a role she'll return to in the show's third season in early 2017 on Showtime. Now, during today's conversation, Charlotte will also read a short passage from Little House in the Hollywood Hills. And this book will blow your mind, I promise. Charlotte Stewart, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you very much.
It's a lot to live up to now.
That was all about me.
I got to tell you, a sure sign for me of whether I've been engrossed in a book is how many pages I have dog-eared to return to. And I think your memoir is about 300 pages, and I'd say about half of them have little dog ears on them.
I couldn't be happier.
And maybe that's a good way to segue. You have someone there keeping you company, right, in your lap?
Oh, you know what? She just jumped down. Shayna. Okay. Whoops. She's coming over again.
Okay.
She'll get back over here.
All right. It's not a stunt dog. This is a real dog, folks.
No, this is real. Come here, Shayna. Shayna. Excuse me.
Okay.
Oh, there she is.
There she is.
That's my girl.
Hi, Shayna.
Hey, Shayna.
Hey, cutie. She wants nothing to do with this.
She's playing with Andy right now. Andy Dembski, who was the co-writer of this book.
And did a great job. Did you know when you were writing this book how compelling it would be for someone like me, the general public? I mean,
I had no idea. It started when Andy and I were involved with a ballet company, and we were doing the Nutcracker. I played mother and he played father, and his two children were involved in it. And we spent a lot of off time out in the entry hall, sitting on the floor and talking while they were in rehearsal. So I guess I told him a few stories that piqued his interest. And he said one day, you should write a book. I went, me? Write a book? Who would want to know about my life? He said, well, you'd be surprised. So I thought about it and said, definitely not. And then I went on tour with Allison Arngrim, who you might know as Nellie on Little House on the Prairie. Allison wrote a book called Memoirs of a Prairie Bitch. And it was hysterical. It was really good. And I was on tour with her for the Little House on the Prairie events, and I saw these books flying off the table. I thought, maybe somebody is interested in Little House on the Prairie. So actually that's how we started, was talking about, my early life and then getting to be, Miss Beadle on Little House on the Prairie. But then it kind of grew. And I guess the more stories I told about my life, Andy kind of pulled and tugged and, got these stories out of me. And I trusted him. And he would write them down, and the next week we would meet, and he would show me what he had written. And I thought, wow, that sounds like me. He had this ability to take the stories that I told him and write them in my voice. So they are my stories, but he just made them better. He made them into a book. What can I say?
Yeah, and I mentioned before we started the interview to Andy that I just thought it was really well done, and he did a really good job, I think. And this is the first time we've spoken, but I felt like you were reading the book to me, which is really the measure of when these books succeed, I think.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Were you surprised at how much you remembered and how much you had done once you saw it all in print?
Well, I'll tell you, I had help because from the time I started in showbiz, I'll say, from about 19 when I got my first job on the Loretta Young show. You're way too young to remember that.
No,
but
I'm not.
I kept date books. I kept not a diary. I wasn't writing thoughts. I was writing appointments and bookings and every commercial I ever did and every TV show I ever did. So I had exact dates of everything, including dates I went on, people I met, going for drinks with John Voight or going to, something or other. I had it all down. So I had a huge box of date books. So I was able to just hand them over to Andy, and he started saying, well, what about, do you did, 72 commercials, or you did, and some of them I didn't remember at all, but, I worked a lot.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned John Voight, let's go to that. I was going to ask you about John Voight later. So what's funny to me is not that you had a drink with John Voight; it's that it became John Voight and Mike Connors of Mannix in the same night. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Do you mind if I just read it out? My book?
If you like, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to put on my glasses because I'm old.
No.
Okay. It starts around page 65, and I'm going to skip a little bit because some of this isn't relevant. But can you see me okay?
You're great. Just go right ahead.
I landed a role back at Desilu on the crime drama Mannix and loved getting to know its handsome star, Mike Connors, who I liked a great deal. His real name was Krikor Ohanian, from an Armenian family born in the Central Valley. So like me, he had arrived in Hollywood as a complete newbie and had to make his way. Mike was a sweetie, and we had a dressing room fling, and he wanted to see me again. So, of course, I said he could find me anytime at the Liquid Butterfly. Now, the Liquid Butterfly was my clothing store in Hollywood, and it was very popular with rock and rollers and all because we did tie-dye and patchwork and all that. In fact, we were written up in Time magazine as being very current. Anyway, within a day or two, I was having breakfast by myself at a cafe on Santa Monica Boulevard reading a newspaper. It's a very good-looking blonde guy sitting at the next table. And he leaned over to say something about how he was so impressed that a pretty girl like me was reading the business section. I was actually reading the comics. And I told him so, and he thought that was pretty funny. Turned out to be Jon Voight, the star of Midnight Cowboy. And John was having a moment in the sun, and with the release of Midnight Cowboy, a dark, risk-taking, beautiful film, he became very well known. And of course, here he was talking to me. And he was very sweet and flirty and chatty, and I was over the moon. I was only too happy to tell him when he asked that he could find me at the Liquid Butterfly. So, assuming that that was the last I'd see of him, I said goodbye and went on with my day. Later on, though, both Mike Connors and Jon Voight walked through the doors of the Liquid Butterfly one after another, both looking to hook up. Gulp. I plastered a smile on my face and having no idea how to make this work. Mike glanced at John and then at my frozen smile, sized up the situation. He grinned at me conspiratorially and ducked out. I ended up going out with John and spent the night at his place. We saw each other off and on for about 3 months until January, February of 1971. Our friendship came to a sudden halt when a gossip columnist wrote about one of our dates, a date which had taken place out in public and anybody could have told him. As soon as the column appeared, I never heard from John again. However, before the year was out, I heard that John had gotten married, and a few years after that, I happened to walk by a restaurant in the San Fernando Valley, and there was John sitting at a table near the window making sweet, funny faces to a baby in his arms. I tapped on the glass and smiled and waved. He gave me a great smile in response and waved Angelina Jolie's tiny hand back at me.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's a great story.
Thank you.
I mean, it begins with celebrity, it ends with celebrity, and like so many things in your book, I mean, it's you just kind of walking through pop culture history. You know, I mean.
Well, you know, this is this town I lived in. These are the people I worked with,
right.
And you know, I don't think I was name dropping in my book, but it just happens that, you know, these are the people I worked with and came in contact with on a daily basis. My Liquid Butterfly store was in a building across from Elektra Records, and the manager in the building, Elliot Roberts, handled, you know, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Jackson Browne, you know, Devo, all the people that were popular at the time. So they were in and out of my store all the time.
Well, that's the thing, and I'm glad you mentioned that. You know, people, you have to understand, this was Charlotte's life. This was where she lived. This is the people around her. For me, it would be, you know, if I was to write this book, it would be Barbie, the au pair down the street, and Roy and Vicky, 2 houses down, whose bunny got loose last night, or, you know, those are the people I live near. Those are the people I interact with. For you, it was, you know, Neil Young and Mike Connors and Angelina Jolie's dad. You know, it's just amazing that way. Now, I didn't realize you were going to read something so early, but I was really hoping to ask you if you wouldn't mind reading that passage about Jim Morrison.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
This will be the last. Do you need the page number? Because
yeah, if you got it. Oh, wait, I've got it, I think.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I need my glasses again.
And I won't ask you to read any more. But this Jim Morrison thing was, I mean, this needs to work its way into you know, rock and roll, the annals of rock and roll history, because it's just it's a sweet story, and yet it's just, the timing is astonishing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I will. And I just mentioned about my store, the Liquid Butterfly, was in this building that housed a lot of, you know, rock and rollers and filmmakers. And, okay, on page 67, one day I noticed a heavily bearded, bushy-haired guy in dark glasses, in the Liquid Butterfly, peering out of the front window in the direction of Elektra Records, watching people arrive in limos for some kind of swanky event. I thought he was a private investigator or a member of the paparazzi stalking a building. But that was my introduction to Jim Morrison, the legendary Lizard King, the object of insane desire for millions of girls across the world. Where he had once looked like the statue of a Greek god come to life, he was now scruffy, massively bearded with a bit of a gut and rounded cheeks. When he smiled, so looking more like a cherub lumberjack than any kind of rock icon. He had no interest in being recognized, no desire for fame. If anything, he struck me as kind of a fugitive. I don't think he was writing or recording any music just then. Like Joni Mitchell, who saw herself as a painter and somehow became a singer-songwriter, Jim saw himself as a poet who had lost his way into the music world. Jim reminded me of Elvis. He wasn't all sex and sizzle up close. He was quiet on the shy side and really funny once you got to know him. His stream of wry observations about people and situations all around him made him a lot of fun to hang out with. And pretty soon we discovered we had a couple of things in common. We both liked to drink and shoot pool. So do you want me to go into the...
Yeah, please.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Okay. Fortunately, there was no shortage of dives nearby where you could find a dark corner, a few beers, and shoot the breeze, which we did often. I really liked Jim, and I think he liked me, possibly because I didn't want anything from him. His bullshit meter had become pretty finely tuned after years in the music business, and he could spot a genuine fake without a lot of effort. So one night long after we started hanging out, Jim was dead drunk. I couldn't leave him in the bar and wasn't sure what else to do, so I got his arm around me, hefted his bulk into my station wagon, and drove him over to my bungalow. There I tried to lug him out of the car without any success. I honked the horn. I said, "Delana, I need your help." Delana was a dear friend of mine who was staying, and she was an artist, and she was absolutely obsessed with Jim Morrison, the rock star. Her eyes just bugged out of her head when she saw who I was dragging through the door. So I said, okay, with Delana's help, I poured him into bed. At the age of 27, Jim was as famous or infamous as any one of the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. So I'm just going to skip to, and I don't have to read this because it's very vivid in my memory. Soon after that was when he was arrested in Florida for indecent exposure, and life became just unbearable for him. He was facing 3 years in jail, and all kinds of, paparazzi and all were around. And he called me up one day and he said, "I have to get out of town. I want to go away. You want to come?" I said, "Sure." And I think really he asked me because he trusted me. He asked me because, we didn't have an affair. We had a friendship. So I said, sure. He picked me up and we started up Pacific Coast Highway. I think we got as far as Malibu the first night, stopped at a bar that had this great lounge of private booths overlooking the ocean. And, we just sat there. We talked a little bit and we didn't talk a little bit. And we ended up staying at the motel next door. And the next day we headed up to Cambria, where I introduced him to some friends of mine. Peter Fells is a metal sculptor. He didn't know who Jim Morrison was. Jim didn't look like Jim Morrison. So, we hung around there for a while. Then he wanted to go see Hearst Castle. So we went up to the Hearst Castle, and they have a tour bus that you have to get on. So Jim Morrison's riding the tour bus. Nobody knew him. They didn't know him at all. So I had my Super 8 camera with me. And so I took pictures of Jim in the Hearst Castle and eating an ice cream cone and I think having a hot dog. And those pictures are in my book, the only ones I have. And then we headed up the coast and we went to Paso Robles and we just were shooting pool and drinking. And, we came back to Los Angeles and he dropped me off at the Liquid Butterfly and I never saw him again. Not long after that, he and Pam moved to Paris and he died.
It's incredible. I mean, that's what I read that and there were several things that struck me. One was quite simply the fact that you weren't trying to get anything from any of these people. These were just the people that you met kind of naturally and you developed a relationship with. I just thought that was such a sweet story. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of drunkenness and a lot of, but it's a sweet story. And I just felt like it's nice that, Morrison had this kind of sweet, long weekend with you before, things really went to hell.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't smash up hotel rooms or, get into drunken brawls or something. It was we just kind of stopped where we wanted to stop and shoot a little pool and then go, where do you want to go now? I don't know, let's go. We walked on the beach. It was very nice and quiet. And I think that's what he needed right then. His life was soon to be in just real chaos.
Right.
And I asked him about this incident in Florida. And he said that, they had a layover in Texas somewhere on the way to Florida. And I don't know, it was a whole day or something. And he had been drinking for like 3 days by the time they arrived in Florida. He doesn't remember the incident on stage in Florida. He has no idea, but he said, yeah, I probably did.
It's crazy. Now, so yeah. We've veered straight to the more salacious stuff in the book. So let's come back and talk about acting, because this is what put you there. You wanted to be an actress, and you succeeded. I mean, you pretty much worked constantly once you got out there.
Yeah, for 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? As a young woman, what do you think made you so appealing to casting folks and directors? Why do you think it works so much?
I know that. Excuse me, my nose itches. It's pollen season in Napa where I live, so I've got an itchy nose. Excuse me. I think in the beginning it was because in the film industry, if you're under 18, they can only work you so many hours. So I literally started acting at 19 or professionally, but I looked much younger. So they could hire me to play 15, 16, 17-year-olds all the way into my mid-20s. So I did a lot of those ingenue characters, And the other thing is, I was professional. I took it very seriously. I had gone to the Pasadena Playhouse, the State Theater of California, to study. I was always on time. I knew my lines. I wasn't trouble. I didn't disrupt the set. I was a professional, and I take great pride in that. So I think maybe that was part of it. I think I didn't really develop as an actor until I was in my mid to late 20s. And I remember the first time that it occurred to me that I was a professional. And that was on the set of Gunsmoke. And I was doing a very long tracking shot on the streets of Dodge. And I was a young saloon girl who was having a kind of a new relationship with a young man. And we're walking. Now, when you do a trucking shot behind a camera, you have to say exactly so many feet from the camera, because if you get too close or too far behind, you're out of focus. Then there's the microphone boom that's over your head, and they have to be able to hear you. And then you have to say your lines because you're doing an interaction with the other actor. And I realized while we were shooting it, while we were walking down the street, oh my God, I'm doing this. I'm actually doing this while saying my lines to Robert Pine, who incidentally is Chris Pine's father.
Here we go again.
Here we go. Loop-de-loop-de-loop-de-loop. Yeah, 6 Degrees of Charlotte Stewart, right? So, I mean, I remember vividly that going through my head while I was doing all this.
And I was waiting, and that's the punchline of the stories. It was that moment when you realize, oh my God, I'm a professional. I'm doing this because I'm good at it. And then decades later you realize, oh, and I was doing it opposite Captain Kirk's dad.
That's right. And I just realized that recently.
Yeah.
I read an article about Chris Pine. He said, my dad Robert is an actor. Well, oh my God, that was Robert I did the scene with. Yeah.
That's so funny. And it has an extra parallel to it, I think, in that the first Star Trek movie that he did, it starts off, it's all about him trying to live up to his dad, and his dad, I think, died young and left him this sports car, and I assume that Robert Pine did not parallel that.
Well, no. Yeah, no, Robert is still alive and well and still a very good-looking man.
Oh,
yeah.
Good. Well, lucky Chris.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just another example of just crazy. And then you worked on, we mentioned My Three Sons, but that was interesting to me in that, you were sort of in love with Tim Considine before you met him, and then You were on the set. You got that
I
gig.
was. I used to run home from school to watch Spin and Marty on the Disney Channel, and then I got cast on on My Three Sons. Gosh, I was 22, I think, and I the night before we're supposed to shoot, I run into him at a party. It was a birthday party. Let's see, it was Dinah Washington's birthday, and she had Ella Fitzgerald and Sam Cooke singing happy birthday to her. And it was at a private home, so we were around a great big grand piano. And I'm looking at that, and I look across the room, and there was Tim Considine staring back at me. I think we clicked right then. But I didn't start dating him until I had done, I think, a couple of episodes of My Three Sons. But then we got married in 1965.
And I guess that the first time I must have seen you must have been on My Three Sons, because I saw all those.
Yeah, and I was on Bachelor Father and Margie and, all of those episodic and kind of silly, if you look at them now, TV shows.
And Loretta Young, you weren't too crazy about her from what I read.
I wasn't. I mean, she was a huge movie star. And I only did one episode with her. She had an anthology series, so there were a lot of guest stars that came in. The first one I did was with Audrey Totter. Look her up if you don't know who she is. The second one I did was with Loretta Young playing my mother. And, she was very autocratic, and, she had this cuss box on the front of her camera where if anybody on the crew cussed, said damn, they had to put money in the cuss box. And she was kind of brusque and a little rude. I didn't find her very warm at all. But then, I don't know. Maybe she wasn't interested.
Well, let's go with someone else from her era. You worked with Jimmy Stewart.
I did. It was on Cheyenne Social Club with Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda. And I played a waitress named May. Had a couple of scenes with he and Mr. Fonda. And the really sad thing is that the day we were shooting, I think a couple of days or a week before, his stepson, his wife's son, had been killed in Vietnam. And so he had his dressing room on the actual sound stage. And he would sit in the doorway of his dressing room, and he was playing the accordion. And he would just sit there and play the accordion. It was so sweet and so kind of eerie at the same time. But I realized he was going through something really difficult. But he was so sweet. And did you get the bit about Henry Fonda?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. You stepped out into the stairway or something?
I wasn't the smartest, I wasn't the brightest bulb in the lamp. Oh my God, I can't believe I did this. But I went up to Henry Fonda and I asked if I could speak to him for a minute. And he said, sure. So we kind of stepped away from the crowd and I asked him if he had a joint. He said, I think you have the wrong Fonda. God, I look back at that, I think what a dope I was. I mean, it was so disrespectful. I should have known better, but I made a lot of mistakes through the years, so that was one of them, and not the worst one.
No, that's a great story. I actually interviewed Jane a couple of years ago for a book I worked on, and I wish I knew that story then because I would love to tell that story. I hope that story gets to her. That would probably make her laugh.
Yeah, probably would.
You would think, right? So why write a book now at this particular point? You talked a little about it. It had more to do with realizing that there might be a market. Did you ever think, maybe I don't want to share these stories? Maybe this is too personal? In the beginning, definitely I thought that. I thought,
I went through some hard times, probably not any more than a lot of people have gone through. I just find myself so fortunate to, at the time, be surrounded with friends and family who helped me. But it took us over 2 years to write this book. And as I got into telling stories about, I did a lot of drugs. I had a problem with alcohol. And, looking back at those, they're not things I'm proud of, but that was my life. It was, there were times when, I thought I was doing something that everybody else was doing, but I just did it too much. And I am just so fortunate to have survived that. And, there might be somebody out there that's going through that now that might think that there's no hope or that they're alone. And they're not. There's just so many ways to be helped and get into recovery.
Do you think, looking back, I couldn't quite put my finger on this reading the book. Would you describe yourself as, were you ambitious about getting parts? Or were you, once you got started, did the parts kind of find you? And then the other part of that is, do you think that had you not had the addictions that you did, do you think your career would have thrived in a different way? Or do you think you were working as much as you were going to be working one way or the other?
Well, there's a couple of things with that. I think I was really lucky in the beginning. I worked a lot, and I had a wonderful agent, and I had two. I had a theatrical agent and a commercial agent, and I did a lot of commercials, and those are long running. I guess because I was this clean cut girl, long blonde hair and little round glasses and all. So I did a lot of those, and then I did work a lot, and all the way through Little House on the Prairie. When I ended Little House on the Prairie, I was 38, pushing 40. And after that, there was a lot of space between jobs. I wasn't getting the work. So here I am. I'm still making money because, as you know about residuals, you still have income. And I had a lot of time on my hands. And maybe I was feeling a little sorry for myself. But, I got into some relationships weren't the healthiest. But, that's my fault. It's nobody else's. And at least I say of my second marriage, we should have had a party instead of a wedding, because both of us like to drink too much, do a little bit of, do a few drugs. And I went too far. So I was lucky that at a certain point, my family and friends came through and, suggested that I do something about my drinking. And so I crashed big time, and I ended up calling my doctor, who I had been with for years, and told him that I thought I had a problem with alcohol, and he suggested a treatment center, which I went to, and thank God that was 1984, and I had 27 years of sobriety following that. I was very lucky.
We won't talk about where that went. Let people read the book.
It went dark.
Yeah. Okay, you gave it away. Trying to leave a little mystery here, Yeah.
There's a mystery. I want to.
What was the hardest thing to reveal about yourself in the book?
Oh, gosh. Maybe I don't know. It was a journey. I was pretty naive when I was born and raised in Yuba City on a farm, and, came to Hollywood, just with my eyes wide open and all the hopes of fame and glory. And, it doesn't quite happen like that. I was so lucky in so many ways, but I took it for granted. And gosh, I wish I could come up with some more answers for you. I'm just glad I got through it. I had my third marriage was a wonderful marriage with David Banks, who I had met in college, and we had a 20-year marriage before he passed away. And that was the best thing that happened to me. We had a sober marriage, and, life was good.
Are there stories that you told Andy, your co-author, that we will not hear at this point, or that might?
Oh, well, they're all in the book.
Okay. You didn't hold anything back.
I don't hold anything back. But, to kind of pinpoint things now and then, it was a ride. It was a roller coaster. So, but I came out the other side.
You did. And you look great, by the way.
Thank you.
You look great. And I got to tell you, there's my favorite picture of you, and people can't see this, they'll have to look back at the cover. But on the front cover, the bottom picture of you is such a striking. There it is. That bottom picture the eyes. I mean, it's just such a beautiful photo.
Oh, thank you. That was actually taken at Tim Considine's house. He didn't take it. My best friend Jeannie, there's a picture of her in the book too. Jeannie took that, and I think I was photographed a lot, in my early days in Hollywood. What can I say? I'm glad they took the pictures because I have them now.
Yeah, no, it's a great photo, and I look at that and I go, yeah, that's the kind of girl I wanted in the '60s and the early '70s. I mean, I was pretty young, but I look and I went, yeah, I could see why they wanted you in so many shows. I love at one point you tell in the book that you were on back-to-back episodes on like CBS of I think Canon and Medical Center one night.
Yes, I was. You want me to tell that?
Yeah, sure.
Just however briefly, yes. In those days, and it was the early '70s, I did a lot of television, and you always provided your own wardrobe. Nowadays, I think they have it for you, but in those days, so I had done a Canon and a Medical Center, and at that time, my mother was very, very ill with cancer, and so I went to stay with her the last week of her life, and it happened that both of these shows were on at the same, one after another on CBS, one at 8 o'clock, one at 9 o'clock. And on the first one, I played I think it was a blind heiress who had been kidnapped. And in the second one, on Medical Center, I played a jailbird being transported in a prison bus. And I was wearing the same jacket in both shows. My mother thought that was so funny. I mean, it was, thank God I had these shows on. It was the end of her life, and we really got a good laugh over that.
Well, my mother loved Medical Center and loved Chad Everett, and it didn't occur to me until I was older that we watched every episode of Medical Center. I thought she just liked the show, but then I realized it was Chad Everett.
It was Chad Everett. He was a hunk.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah. In fact, the first Medical Center I did was during my divorce with Tim, and they cast him opposite me. I had no idea until I got to the set, and there he was. He was playing my fiance in the show, but we kept our cool. We didn't tell anybody. We kept it a complete secret, and nobody ever knew.
And you guys came full circle from what I read in the book. You were able to salvage a friendship over the years?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, I'm friends with all my ex-husbands.
What is he doing these days? Is he working? Is he?
Oh God, he works as an actor occasionally, but his main love is photography, and his primary love is race cars. So he has done a book on the Indy 500. It's like a coffee table book with all the pictures and all the facts and figures. And now he's working on a double edition on American drivers at Le Mans.
Wow.
And these are two huge books, and he has the complete cooperation of all the race car manufacturers and the drivers. I mean, everybody knows him. While we were married, we were always surrounded with drivers and, going to races, and all of that was big, and still is a big part of his life. And we're friends. I was just there in November. I went by his house. He actually took the picture on the back of my book.
Oh, really?
You can't really see it very well, but I don't know if you can see it. But
yep.
He took this picture. So, yeah, we're dear friends. In fact, I've spent a lot of time with his wife, Willie, and he's now a grandfather, and, we're friends.
Excellent. Well, I'm just thinking that even though I was not a huge Little House guy, I did watch the first season or two because I was at that age, I guess, when you're watching, all you had was network TV, so you watched.
That's true.
I'm thinking Little House fans will kill me if I don't ask you a little bit about Little House.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell people the story of how you auditioned for that? I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah, I had a lot of auditions in those days, and I was doing Gunsmoke and Bonanza and everything, and I got a call to go to Paramount Studios to read for something like Little House on I couldn't remember, never heard of it. So I went there, and as I walked into the waiting room, there were all these women sitting around in Prairie dresses with bonnets. I thought, what? So they called my name, and I went in. And there was Michael Landon. Of course, I knew who he was. I had never met him before, but there was Michael Landon. He's hard to miss. And there were like 5 men in the room. The producer was sitting across the desk. And so I said, "Excuse me, but may I sit behind the desk?" And they all kind of looked at each other like, okay. So Mr. Friendly, Ed Friendly was the producer. He got up and sat in one of the chairs, and I got behind the desk. And I told them to be quiet. And I said to listen up. And I read my scene with the casting director who they were playing Laura and Mary their first day of school. And they all thanked me very much. And I went home. And like I did with every other interview, you go home and you never hear from anybody again. And my agent called. He said, "They want to sign you for 4 years." I mean, that is like an actor's dream, to be under contract into NBC with Michael Landon. So, that's how I got Miss Beadle on Little House on the Prairie.
And did you ever audition in that manner before or after, where you took charge? Or did you usually just go in, do your thing, and get out?
I usually was very polite and said, "Okay, are you ready to read?" But somehow, I don't know what got into me, but I just thought, I guess I wanted to show him that I could be the teacher because she's behind the desk. And it gave me something to work off of. And I mean, I never went to interviews in costume or, tried to pull any of those stunts, like I'd heard of before. But no, it was just one of those bold moves, and it paid off.
That's great. And I mentioned before that you did have that moment with old Pa Ingalls where you've been on the show. And I should point out that he was not married at the time.
No.
Right?
Regardless, if you've read Alison Arngram's book, you'll see that Michael used to have a cup of coffee in his hand most of the time, and I think part of it was bourbon. And so by the end of the day, maybe he, wasn't thinking too clearly, but he did, kind of sidle up to me one afternoon and kind of gave me that, "Do you have to go home so soon?" And I just looked like a deer in the headlights and said, "Yeah, I better go home." And I just, scooted out. But I didn't, you don't do that with your boss. It didn't seem like a very good idea.
Yeah.
So, but I've always admired him. He was a great guy to work with. He was very funny, total command. And he ran a wonderful set. It was a family set, it was all these children around all the time. And, and the crew that worked with him had been with him all through Bonanza. And then after Little House, they went on with him to Highway to Heaven, so, he was a great guy to work with.
And there were other people on the set that you got along well with, right? I mean, Allison, you mentioned. And
Allison. Well, they were children, but, we did get along. We got to know each other better as adults when we were going on these Little House jaunts. But Karen, who played Ma, Karen Grassley, and I became very good friends. Victor French was a very good friend. They were, it's not like we hung out together, but, they were very pleasant to work with, be around.
And professionally, was that 4 years kind of the best time of your career?
Yeah, I got to say it was. It was good. The security wasn't bad. The notoriety was, okay, although nobody in the entertainment industry paid much attention to us. I didn't get a lot of work based on that. But, I was very comfortable, and it was a relief to have, go to work every day on the set. I love sets. I still love sets. There's just, looking around these big places and the crew and the camera. And, it's all changed now. I just made a film a couple of years ago called Where's My Sandwich? And we shot in a real house. And the camera, I thought they were using a little still camera. It was like Canon, but it was this little still camera. And I thought, when are they going to bring out the big, thing? Shot the whole thing with this little tiny Canon film.
It's all changed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, look at us. You're in.
We could shoot a movie like this, couldn't we?
We could. We probably could. And this is high def, and this is probably better quality than they recorded Little House on.
Probably.
And it's amazing, really, how over the years there's always a show like Little House was, where it got decent to solid ratings. It lasted many years.
Mm-hmm.
It was very popular with a certain group of people. It was never the number one show. people weren't quoting lines from it necessarily.
You go to Minnesota and you'll find thousands of people who absolutely love Little House, and they did as a kid, and now they're showing it to their grandkids. I had no idea until I went on to one of these, jaunts into the Midwest where there were 1,000 people cheering and just letting you know how much they love the show. I have a great deal of respect for the fans of Little House on the Prairie. They have stuck with us. And now we're big all over the world. I mean, there's 120 countries showing our show. And in fact, we're going to France this summer, and we have a big following there. We'll be there in August.
I was going to ask, how often do you do these fan events now?
I do maybe 5 or 6 a year, and not just for Little House on the Prairie. I go up to North Bend, Washington, for the Twin Peaks fans, and there's quite a big following over there too.
So, speaking of Twin Peaks, maybe we'll kind of start winding down with this.
Seg into it
just a little bit, yeah. My wife and I went years ago to Snoqualmie, and also to in the same week we went to Snoqualmie where Twin Peaks was shot.
Yes.
And of course, we also went to Roslyn where Northern Exposure was shot. It's not that far from there.
Did you know that Twin Peaks' original name was Northern Exposure?
I saw that. Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah.
It makes sense. How surprised were you to hear that anyone was thinking about bringing the show back? I mean, it only did 2 seasons.
I know. Actually, a season and a half, because the first season was a half a season. Well, through the years, people have, mentioned it. And then I got an email one day from, I don't know if it was Dana Ashbrook or something. He said, have you heard anything about they're doing Twin Peaks again? And then one morning I got a phone call, and it was David Lynch. And he said, well, Char, you ready to go to work? I was like, yeah, I'm ready. And then following that, I heard the news that ABC wasn't going to do it, that David Lynch wasn't going to do it because they didn't want to come up with the budget that he needed to do the show the way he wanted to do it. So all of us, the cast members, practically everybody in the original cast, went online with little videos saying, Twin Peaks without David Lynch isn't worth doing. Twin Peaks without David Lynch is like Abbott without Costello. Twin Peaks without, and they went on and on and on. And if you're watching from ABC finally gave in and gave David what he wanted. So
ABC or Showtime?
Showtime.
Right.
ABC. Oh, I meant Showtime.
That's
Excuse me.
That's all
ABC was the original network. Showtime finally gave him what he needed. And so I was up there in October, November, somewhere like that, up in North Bend doing my Betty Briggs. And it was fun. It was great.
So you've shot all your stuff.
Yep.
Do you have a sense of how many episodes you might appear in?
At this point, I'm not allowed to say because I had to sign a confidentiality contract. But Betty Briggs is definitely there.
Okay.
Although I wasn't wearing my happy face button this time. And, I just forgot. I should have brought it with me.
Oh, you still have it from the show?
I do.
Oh, look at that, folks.
It's right there. You're never completely dressed without a smile. That's the eternal optimist.
I love your explanation in the book for what's wrong with Betty's son, and it's you say his dad's military and his mom's Catholic. Yeah, and Bobby's screwed. Yeah.
Yeah, I went into to the office with David Lynch and Mark Frost, and I said, I don't want to tell you guys what to do, but could you listen to me for a second? I have this idea about Bobby, and that's what I said. So in the following week or so, we had a scene in the dining room where the old cigarette and the meatloaf, if you remember, and leading up to that scene, Bobby is looking at a crucifix on the wall that's made out of palm fronds. And I think that's where they came up with that. Well,
I got to tell you, it's the funniest thing. So we're doing this interview today. It's May 23rd, for people who want to know. And in the mail today, unexpectedly, and you'll be able to see this, people won't, this showed up in my mail for me to do an interview. It's the Twin Peaks FAQ. And sure enough, you're in here. Let me see. Let's see if I can pull up, and I will tell you.
Betty Briggs, the Eternal Optimist.
Yep. Let's see. Page 59. Let's see if I can get to it real quick. Isn't that something? I mean, the timing was incredible.
You know what? That's my life.
There you go. All you really need to know about Betty Briggs is this. She wears a smiley face button pinned to her coat at Laura Palmer's funeral. Mm-hmm. Betty isn't terminally stupid or cheerful, just a poster child for avoidance. And when you live in Twin Peaks and you're Bobby Briggs' mom and Major Garland Briggs' wife, maybe that's a good thing. Anyway,
I love it.
Yeah, I just thought that was
a last minute thing. You know, the day of Laura Palmer's funeral, that when we were shooting, I happened to have a little happy face button, and I put it on my suit going to Laura Palmer's funeral. Nobody noticed. The director didn't notice. The cast didn't notice, but the fans noticed, and I started getting happy face this and happy face that. So
people who didn't live through Twin Peaks when it was broadcast originally cannot appreciate, unless they're maybe, actually, if you were a fan of Breaking Bad or The Walking Dead, that was one of the most original appointment TV shows that there was. The whole nation stopped while Twin Peaks was on. Unfortunately, once David was off of it, it didn't hold up as well, and it disappeared. But
I agree. And we really needed David's hand in it. I think everybody thought they were kind of doing a Lynchism. And you can't do David Lynch. David Lynch can do David Lynch.
Well, and unlike Lost, which was another appointment TV series, which they built up so much expectation about how it would eventually end, it never mattered how Twin Peaks was going to end. It didn't matter. It really didn't matter whether they found who killed Laura Palmer or not. It was just the weirdness and the situations and the characters week to week. You just never knew where it was going to go. You really didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I'm looking forward to watching the new Twin Peaks, or whatever they're going to call it, because I'm sure there's going to be some answers as to, things that happened in the early one, or who knows? I don't know where this is going to go. Unfortunately, we have lost several cast members. Our dear Dawn Davis, who played Major Briggs, passed away, and Catherine Coulson, the log lady. And, we missed them so terribly. Catherine was one of my dearest friends. We worked together in Eraserhead,
I know. That's why you and David go back way back. Time we have left, tell people what it's like to know David Lynch casually, socially.
Oh, David is a very sincere person. He's a meditator. He is a joyful person. I've never seen David in a bad mood. When I was up there this last year shooting, it was like his set was so comfortable, although there was probably 30 people around at the time. And it was wonderful. I didn't understand his, the way he worked when I was doing Eraserhead. I mean, he was a puppy then. He was a student filmmaker. But I just followed everything he said. That's what I do, I don't think it's important for me to understand everything about, what's in the film or what's in the script. The director wants me to do a certain thing. And I think it's mainly because David was a painter. He's an artist before he was a filmmaker. And I have said this often, that David Lynch paints film. He does a visual thing that is unlike any other director I've ever known. It's really important to him how you hold something, or how many times you pull on something under the bed. You just do it until he says go, and it works.
Excellent. Well, anything else coming up, film or TV wise?
No, not right now. I'm going on a book tour, and I'm doing a lot of interviews. Thank you very much. And I just got married, and we haven't had a honeymoon yet, but we're going to go to France to see all the fans of Little House on the Prairie in August. And I think my life is pretty full just the way it is.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. I did not know you had just gotten married. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. I married an old friend of 35 years.
That's great.
Very comfortable. Very comfortable.
Very nice.
And I spend most of my days sewing. You know, I have a fundraiser that I do for a local hospital here. It's their cancer program. Do we have those bags handy? I pulled them out a little while ago so that I could show you. But it's a cancer program. It's called the Wellness Center, and it's for cancer patients who have gone through chemo, radiation, all of this hard stuff. And they're called Beadle bags.
Oh, look at that.
That is one of my Beadle bags with Miss Beadle.
Handmade by Miss Beadle.
Here is one with the children on Little House on the Prairie.
Wow.
And I make them and I sell them online and at my conventions. And all the money, or a percentage of the money, goes to the Wellness Center. So I'm happy to have something to get up for every day. I work every day.
Very nice. Well, in a second, I'm going to ask you where people can find that online.
Okay.
All right. So, folks, listen, you can find Charlotte Stewart's amazing new memoir. I think you should be able to tell by now how I was so taken by it. You got to read this book, Little House in the Hollywood Hills, A Bad Girl's Guide to Becoming Miss Beadle, Mary X, and Me, in great bookstores everywhere, or you can order it right now at a great price at MrMedia.com. If you're watching the video on MrMedia.com, just below the video, you'll see the cover of the book. You can click on it right now. You can download it via ebook immediately, or you can have it from Amazon in a day or two. So just click, order the book. I'm telling you, you will enjoy this book. If you love a good celebrity story, and this is unlike any story you've ever read, I guarantee it. You'll enjoy it. Now,
thank you.
Tell people the website where they can find you or find the pillows.
We've just started the website. It's called charlottestewartbook.com. It's only one page right now, but we will be adding to it and telling you where I'm going to be in the Midwest or France or whatever, and how you can buy a Beadle bag.
Love it, the Beadle bag. And are you doing any social media, Twitter or Facebook, any of that kind of thing?
Yes, I'm on Twitter, Real Char Stewart. What is it? On Twitter, Real Char Stewart. It's called.
Okay. And
then the website and Facebook, of course.
Yeah.
Facebook. I'm all over Facebook, and I will answer you. You write to me on Facebook, I will friend you and answer you.
Oh, you're going to regret saying that, I think. Okay.
Oh my God, I hope. I hope I do.
Well, Charlotte Stewart, it was a really fun book. I cannot say that enough. I still think I'm underselling how much I enjoyed this book. Delighted to meet you. Delighted, Charlotte Stewart. Happy at last, I guess they would say. And thank you so much for joining us on Mr. Media today.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Thank you so much. It was fun. Thank you. Can we do it again?
Yeah, you want to come back when Twin Peaks start airing? Talk about it?
Yeah. And in fact, Andy has the name of my next book, Outrageous at 75.
Come back. I would love to have you back to talk about Twin Peaks.
Okay.
When you can talk, let's do that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Turn your back on the deceiver. It's a bad idea to believe her. A bad idea to believe her. Turn up the stereo receiver. Turn up the stereo receiver.
Mr. Media is recorded live before a studio audience full of men and women who seem to have been everywhere and with everyone throughout modern history, including Forrest Gump, Zelig, and Justin Bieber, in the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida.
Hey, I wanted you to know that I really enjoyed your interview with Robert Greenfield.
Oh, I just thought, what a small world.
I know. Yeah, he's one of my favorite people, and you got him good.
You have a pet in your lap? Who is that? Oh, cute.
That's Shayna.
Shayna. Well,
Yeah.
if you want to introduce Shayna at some point, feel free.
Okay, I will.
All right. All right, so we are...
I thought if you asked me some really hard questions, I was going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you," because my dog was in my lap.
So you're going to be the dog lady, stepping up for the log lady?